Hey everyone, just got in my brand new Blu-ray of Jaws 5. Wait a minute, there's no Jaws 5! Crafty Italians got me again! Alright, so, it's a slipcover. This was released as Jaws 5 in some countries, but like a lot of Italian ripoffs, it's unofficial, even though it does use footage from the actual Jaws movies, which is what kept this movie off of Blu-ray for a while. I think Scream Factory or Shout Factory was going to release it for a while, and they had to cancel it. You know, using other people's copyright without permission is kind of a no-no. Anyway, this was a limited-time slipcover if you pre-ordered this from Severin. Here's the front, and then the back is pretty simplistic here. Just the credits and such. I like this. A ferociously good time with cruel jaws. Bruno Mattei has made trash movie magic. All right. Yeah, Bruno Mattei. He also did another movie kind of like this as far as a fake sequel. That was Terminator 2, which came out before James Cameron's Terminator 2, and is actually the movie Shocking Dark, which has... It's kind of Terminator, but more aliens, so it's ripping off kind of a different James Cameron movie a little bit more, but anyway. So, yeah, that was the limited edition slipcover, which I don't think you can get anymore, I mean, unless you want to go to eBay. Also, Severin, why are your slipcovers so goddamn tight? Alright, so... And then the Blu-ray just has the regular Cruel Jaws, which is the title it's released in for most of the world, without the Jaws 5. And back cover, for those who want it. No reversible cover or anything like that. It's just the one-sided there, and just the one disc on the inside right there. So, yeah, Bruno Mattei directed this in the sharksploitation genre, or the Jaws ripoffs, of which there are hundreds. I think James Rolfe at Cinemassacre had done a video about like shark ripoff movies a couple years ago. But this one is probably a bit notorious because it did have the fake sequel title and because it did use footage from the 4 Jaws movies without permission. So, of course, there's the original Jaws, Steven Spielberg's classic. I'm actually not a huge Jaws fan. Yeah, it's still a very good movie. I've just personally never been a huge fan of the Jaws movies. But obviously there's the classic. There's Jaws 2, which I mostly remember because of the electrocution bite thing, and also because that was part of the Universal Studios Jaws ride, which I do miss. I did like that ride. And that Roy Schneider came back. Jaws 3, which is the one with the shitty 3D that took place at like a SeaWorld ripoff, and Dennis Quaid, I think, is in that. And then Jaws 4, The Revenge, or just Jaws The Revenge. I don't think the number 4 is in the title. And that is, of course, the one where a shark is personally after a specific family because of a curse, and it wants revenge off of killing all of the other sharks. It's also the one where, famously, Michael Caine dives off a boat and he's completely dry when he comes out of it. Yeah, so that's the Jaws series. Basically, you got the good one, the first one. I've only seen Jaws 2 like twice, and it's been like a good 25 years since I've seen it. But I remember kind of liking Jaws 2, and I remember Jaws 3 being reasonably entertaining. Then again, I also remember Jaws 4 being entertaining in another way too. I remember them doing that. The guy's got that like electrocution thing on a spear and is trying to shove in the shark's mouth. I don't know. It was on HBO. The 4th one was on HBO like a ton when I was a kid. The rest were on like other channels. But, I mean, I remember them being alright. So I'm actually recording this before I actually watch this movie. I've never actually seen Cruel Jaws before, which is the title we should really be going with, but I just love that Universal gonna sue somebody. The studios, they can't release any movies right now anyway. So, I'm gonna watch the film, I'm gonna tell you what I think about it, because these Italian ripoffs are just their own little subgenre of exploitation movies, where, you know, like, the Italians, they got into the westerns with the spaghetti westerns, and of course those are very famous, you know, American actors in these Italian productions, Cinecittà, and all that stuff. But there were these Italian grindhouse makers would just pump out these rip-offs of popular American movies, sometimes with the English-speaking casts, sometimes dubbed, sometimes a hybrid of the two. And so they put out a bunch of like Mad Max rip-offs, a bunch of Terminator rip-offs, a bunch of Alien rip-offs, a bunch of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead rip-offs, a ton of them. They just ripped off everything, and some of the rip-offs were really fun. And I've heard good things about Cruel Jaws, so I'm very interested to give this a spin. As I said, director is Bruno Mattei, but he, a lot of the times on these Italian films, they would use a more Anglo-sounding pseudonym to trick you into seeing that Italian movie and make you think it's just a normal Hollywood American production. So he directed this under the name of William Schneider. And that is why I know that this Blu-ray has two cuts. It has the regular version, or the American cut, and it has a Japanese cut that has a couple extra deleted scenes in it. It's a couple of minutes longer, and they're calling that the Snyder cut, because of course, the shitty Justice League thing. So, I think that's funny. I have heard that the two different cuts of this movie are almost like different transfers, or they have different color timing. And that seems odd. So I'm gonna watch the longer version just to get more of the movie. But then I'm gonna also watch a handful of scenes in the regular version, just so I can kind of compare and contrast how they look. So yeah, I'll be back in like 2 hours, but I'll be back in a second for you guys. Oh boy, that was a movie. So the back of the case. There's a quote that says it's the Troll 2 of killer shark movies. It's not that so bad it's good, but it's definitely one of those so bad it's good movies. So first off, I watched the Snyder cut on the disc. After looking through a couple scenes of the Mattei cut, and both of them are credited to William Snyder, by the way. Bruno Mattei's name is not in the opening credits. The Mattei cut is definitely better to watch, because what I've noticed is, and I'll put up a couple screen caps as an example, but the Snyder cut is, they like did a weird thing with it where it looks like a bad Instagram filter was put on it, so like the blacks are like super black, because for a while I thought that there's a couple shots that are filmed obviously in direct sunlight, but you can barely see the front of the characters, so it's almost like they're silhouettes. So I'm like, well, were they filming with the sun in back of them as opposed to in front of them so you could see? And no, I think it was just the way it was color timed. Whereas the Mattei cut looks like a normal restored high def, 2K or 4K scan. Actually, I don't know. Was this a 2K or 4K? It doesn't even say. No. Okay. So, whatever they restored this as, the Mattei cut looks a lot better. As far as the visual quality of the Blu-ray disc in particular, this movie uses a lot of stock footage. A lot. So obviously the footage that looks best is the stuff that was actually shot for this movie, and then the other stuff that's spliced in, it depends. But there's, at least on the Snyder version, there's a couple scenes where there's some very obvious artifacts on the actual new footage, but otherwise it's certainly watchable, but the Mattei cut scenes definitely look a lot better, so I definitely recommend watching that if you're only going to watch one of them. So the movie's plot is essentially, this guy wants to foreclose on this, they call it an aquarium, but it's mostly just like they have a pool with a couple dolphins and seals in it. But this guy wants to foreclose on that so he can build like a bunch of different hotels, and he's involved with, I think, the mafia for real estate or whatever. And then a guy who looks a lot like Hulk Hogan owns this aquarium, and I think his son is a marine biologist. And so they're all involved, and then there's this tiger shark, though I think they do use some great white footage in there, but there's a tiger shark that starts killing people. And while the characters in the movie refer to it as like a homicidal maniac and all this stuff, it's just a shark that gets killed a few people. They like imbue it with like serial killer vibes. And the mayor and the real estate guy really want this boat race kind of thing to go on. But of course that doesn't go well, much like, not closing the beaches in Amity, and that's basically the plot, and then it's about hunting the shark down. It's the plot you think is going to have, basically. You're not watching this for the plot, though. You are watching this because it is unintentionally funny in a few different ways. Most of the humor comes from the very bad acting and line delivery, and the kind of outlandish dialogue at times. And when you have really weird dialogue delivered by people who can't act, that ends up being some of the most good-naturedly funny stuff you can have in a so bad it's good movie. The thing that keeps this from being like a Troll 2 is that there's not a lot of what the fuck, what were they thinking stuff. It was mostly they're just trying to make a Jaws ripoff, so there's that stuff. But, you'll have scenes where an actor might be firing a gun off at the shark. They put in a sound effect of the gun firing, even though the gun doesn't kick because it's not actually firing, and then it cuts to stock footage of something that is clearly happened 7 years ago and is obviously not in the same space with the characters, and they just kind of put in sound effects to blend it. There's awkward editing all over. There's a couple really bad day for night scenes where they clearly film the beach in the middle of the afternoon and they put a blue filter on the lens to make it look like it's dusk, but it's very clearly just 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There's a little wheelchair-bound girl who they tried to make a precocious character that's funny, and unfortunately, the scenes that are the most entertaining are the scenes that should be the most boring in a movie like this, where it's a shark attack stuff. Because the shark attack stuff, it's a mix of poorly filmed scenes and a lot of stock footage, a lot of footage that's stolen from other movies. Aside from the Jaws movies, this one mentions Joe D'Amato's Deep Blood and The Last Shark, neither of which I've seen, by the way, of those. So, because of that, the size of the shark greatly varies throughout the movie, where it seems like it's very small, it might be a different animal that's not a shark, and then some scenes where it looks friggin' huge. But those scenes, they just kind of are boring. There's not a lot of, interesting shark gore. There's, a dead body that washes up on the beach. It's pretty cool. But otherwise, it's just, you see blood kind of explode in water, so it just kind of becomes that red fog when you see blood in the water. There's not a lot of, I was expecting there to be more gore. This is an Italian movie. They're usually known for their gore. There's a movie where a zombie fights a shark. That's Italian. So a lot of that stuff is kind of boring. Though the ending of the movie is hilariously anticlimactic. We're just kind of, I guess we're over now because that happened. Sure. I don't want to say it doesn't. It does have an ending. It just happens very quickly. So most of the enjoyment of the movie is what would in another movie just be boring exposition scenes or something. Imagine if you saw the 2 most recent American Godzilla movies, where people complained there was too much of characters talking, not enough Godzilla. Now imagine the Godzilla stuff was actually the most boring part, and you liked the human interaction because of the bad acting and the weird fucking dialogue. That is this movie. The shark stuff is the most boring part of it. What's funny is the characters standing around a map and they're talking about their plan and they're delivering it very poorly. Or there's lines about how sharks are just they're just a locomotive of a killing machine and stuff, or they only exist to kill and eat and make other baby sharks, and there's a lot. Or a scene where a cop is leaving the office and he dramatically jumps over something. It is pretty funny during some of the action scenes, I guess, when they start playing the theme from Star Wars, or at least a very, very close sound-alike. I think they also they try to play a little bit of a Jaws theme, but it doesn't sound as close. The Star Wars one sounds like it's very close right up until the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun part. Like, the build-up part of it sounds like they just cut it from a fucking John Williams album. Which I would not be surprised if that was the case. Or there's this weird British family that comes to see the shark that's killed people, and they're very pissed off to find out that the shark's supposed to not be there, even though it is. There's a lot of interesting creative choices in the movie. But it's not like a laugh-a-minute kind of movie. Like, it's a movie that would definitely benefit from like a riff tracks or the MST3K treatment to fill in the slower gaps. But otherwise, yeah, there's a scene where they shoot a flare gun at the shark, and it's way too close, and it just causes the whole boat to explode. I don't know. There's some interesting stuff in this movie. Don't want to spoil all of it, but yeah, this movie is firmly in the so bad it's good genre of enjoyability. But again, yeah, it's not The Room, it's not Troll 2, it's not Double Down. It's not at that high echelon. It's just sort of at this. They really tried to make a kind of a cynical ripoff of the Jaws movies, and they didn't quite know how to get there. So yeah, it's fun. It's. I mean, I did watch the longer cut of it, so I would definitely recommend the Mattei cut. A, for just looking better on the disc, and B, for being slightly shorter. Because I imagine the extra stuff they added was probably just kind of more stock footage, I'm guessing. So yeah, it's not the best of its type, but when it's fun, it's really fun. And then when it's slower, it's you're just waiting for the next kind of fun part to get there. So that's my basic critique of the movie in general. Just based on the quality of the movie alone, I'm watching this movie alone right now, or I was watching it alone. This is definitely a movie that would be more enjoyable if you had some friends over and you were watching it in like a party atmosphere where you could all be laughing together or riffing on the movie while it's playing. It's that kind of movie. It's more of a party movie than a sit alone and chuckle at it type movie. So if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for a so bad it's good shark movie from the mid-90s, even though it looks like it was probably made in the late 80s, that might just be the stock footage, though. Yeah, that's the kind of level of enjoyment you're going to get from it. But let's talk about the extras. So the first extra is a rundown of the sharksploitation genre, as it's titled, which is basically a little interview, not really an interview, but an interview with Rebecca McKendry. She has a PhD in film. I think her PhD was specifically in horror related. I follow her on Twitter. She's a very knowledgeable person. Her PhD beats my bachelor's in film, and she comes across in this extra like the professor I wish I had, because unfortunately there was no horror-specific class when I was in when I was getting my degree. There was a sci-fi class that I took, though. And on her extra, she talks about the original Jaws, how it was a big hit. She talks about the movies that tried to capitalize on its fame in its immediate wake that aren't about sharks, like Orca and Piranha and stuff. And then she talks about the other shark rip-off movies, both from like the 70s onward, and then some of the more modern stuff, like your Ghost Shark and Sharknado and Sci-Fi Channel stuff. It's a very good extra. It is. Even though there's not many extras on this disc, this is an extra that I really like. It's not super in-depth, but it gives a broad overview of how Jaws came out, its success, what made it different from some of the contemporaneous movies at the time, how that was followed up with in sort of the rip-off genre, and how that ended up having its copycats, and then how that's gone into different pushed ways today. She goes into Deep Blue Sea and CGI sharks and stuff like that, and she sort of ends with like a thing about aquatic horror and sort of the joys of that. And she talks about the Jaws sequels as well. It's pretty to the point, but it's a decent-sized extra, but it gets to the point. It just gives you a broad overview of stuff. It plays like if you were reading a film textbook about shark movies, it plays like a really good introduction to that, where it gives you most of the major high points in it. But she obviously comes across, she's obviously very knowledgeable about this stuff. She comes across very likable. It's a very nice extra. Of the 2 extras in trailer that's on this disc, it's definitely the highlight of those extras. The other main extra is an interview with one of the bit actors, Jay Colligan. It's performed over Skype because of COVID. But the visual quality's not that bad, considering that it's better than some of the other webcam interviews I've seen on these things. And he mostly just talks about how it was fun to film. He does clarify 2 things I was suspecting when watching the movie. The first is that the script was written in Italian and then translated, or transliterated maybe even, into English, and that's why some of the dialogue sounds as weird as it does, but that the actors were told to change it around to make it sound more authentically English, or American English, and sometimes the actors just didn't bother to do that. So he does talk about that, and it's filmed in Florida. All of the actors are American actors, non-union, as to be expected. He does say that the guy who looks like Hulk Hogan actually did work as a Hulk Hogan impersonator, which I kind of figured in that. And he also clarifies that almost all of the underwater footage, if not all of it, was not filmed for the movie, that it was taken over from another production that ran out of money, as well as the other stuff it was stolen from. All things I expected, so it's nice that the interview does clarify that. By the way, the actor in the movie, one of his bigger scenes in the movie is he's feeding poisoned fish to a dolphin to try to kill the dolphin. He's not one of the main characters, but he's in there. It's a fine interview. It's reasonably short. It gives those details, but it's not super interesting or anything. But it's nice. And then after that, the very last extra is a trailer. It's not a trailer from when the film was. It's not contemporaneous to the film's release. It's a new trailer, Severin cut. It's not a particularly good trailer. It runs a little bit long. It doesn't really give you a feel of the movie. It is what it is. So, disc is a little light on extras. But I guess the fact that this movie even got a Blu-ray release is shocking, considering all of the issues around it. I think that even the back of it calls it like a litigious nightmare or something, or just one very litigious fin, the tip of a very litigious film. It's it's kind of surprising it was able to get a release, and I know obviously the other company, Shout, tried to release it and they fell into trouble. So the fact that it even got release is kind of big. The Rebecca McKendry extra is great. It's nice that you do get 2 different versions of the movie, and even though I didn't like the color timing or whatever they did with the Snyder Cut version on it, it's nice that both versions of the film aren't the exact same version with just a couple extra deleted scenes put in. They do look different, so you're almost getting a different experience in that way. Without watching it from beginning to end, the Mattei cut looks a lot better. But yeah, this is a party movie. It's a so bad it's good movie that has a couple too many slow bits in it, but otherwise it's fun. It's a fun, harmless movie. You'll chuckle at it. You'll probably have a lot more fun with it if you watch it with a group than if you watch it alone like I did. But I'd still recommend picking it up if this sounds like it's your bag. So unfortunately, the fun Universal's going to sue Severin slipcover, you could only get this if you had pre-ordered it about a month ago. I think it was about a month ago that the pre-orders went up. So if you pre-ordered it, you were able to get this. But I think you can't get this anymore. I think you can just get the regular disc, which looks like this. The They also, I know Severin, like, commissioned somebody to write a novelization of the movie, and they added a bunch of shit to it, so that's also available. And there's a couple other, like, doodads and stuff that they made available. I don't know if they're all sold out from the original bundle or not. But, yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend picking up if you like the kind of so bad it's good type stuff, or certainly if you like schlocky Italian movies that are of this nature, which I do, for the most part. So that's Cruel Jaws, or Jaws 5, as this slipcover is calling it. Yeah, I guess, maybe you preferred a couple more extras, but I don't really know what else you could have done. I mean, I guess if you had been able to, Severin, if you had been able to get Rebecca McKendry to do a full-length commentary, that would have been cool, or someone else who's involved in shark exploitation, as the extra calls it, something like that. But ultimately, yeah, I think this is a very decent release, especially considering all the issues behind it. Slipcover's fun, and, I enjoyed watching it, so